What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to another tier list video. Today, I want to talk about ETFs. So you've heard from a lot of people, just buy ETFs and forget about it. It's easy to manage, there's low expense fees, but not all ETFs are created equal. Here at the bottom, we have 12 ETFs that I've traded in the past and I'm familiar with. The goal here today is just to educate you guys on these ETFs, what they do, their expense ratios, what some of the best investments are, in my opinion, in my experience. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this was one of my favorites, however, not the best one, TQQQ. This is a triple leveraged ETF that tracks the Qs, so basically the NASDAQ 100 companies, and I'll rank it as C, mainly because there's a lot of leverage when it comes to a triple leveraged ETF. These moves on the Qs are already pretty crazy, and then you extrapolate that by 3x, like it just gets pretty insane. I traded TQQQ back in 2022, and I was actually selling options on the underlying, and I got caught pretty bad. I mean, 2022 was a bad year for tech stocks, and I was caught holding the bag. TQQQ just moves like 10% in a day, and it's not for the faint of heart. I think this ETF is for someone that wants to hold it for maybe a couple of days, maybe a week or so, but not necessarily a long-term play, mainly because of volatility decay. So whenever this ETF goes down 10%, for example, it takes a lot more for it to come back to that same level that it was. Don't be like me. Don't be catch holding a bag back in 2022, trading options on TQQQ. In my opinion, this only makes sense as a short-term trade, so I'll rank it as C. SCHD. This is Schwab's dividend growth ETF fund, and they're very selective on who they pick. I'll rank it as A, mainly because they have very, very quality and strict qualifying metrics to include to their fund. And, you know, the downside with this is that you'll probably underperform in a bull market. SCHD is actually having a phenomenal start of 2026. They've seen great returns, actually outperforming the S&P and the Qs. So very odd year for SCHD, and you're also earning a 4.5–4% dividend. And I'm not necessarily super big into dividends because at this time in my career, my investing journey, I'm more into growth. So SCHD doesn't necessarily have a place in my portfolio right now, in my lifestyle. But I think sometime in the future, this can be a great dividend play. And like I mentioned, it's a great fund. They're very selective on who they pick, and they've been having an incredible year. So if you're a dividend investor, I think SCHD is a phenomenal pick. However, it's very dependent on what you do in your investment preferences and style. So I'll rank it as A. Let's talk about ARKK. This is Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF, and it peaked back in 2021, and ever since, it's been down more than 75%. Imagine you invest money in 2021 and you're down 75%. We've been having some great returns in the last 5 years, and Cathie Wood has somehow had negative returns in this fund. I'll rank it as D. Do not trust this fund. She makes a ton of money from management fees. This one specifically has a 0.75 management fee. So you're paying Cathie Wood almost a percentage for her to give you negative 75% returns since 2021. So in my opinion, this is just nuts. I'm not even necessarily sure how this is still a thing. This is an innovation ETF. Like, I understand where she comes from and the whole goal with the fund. But in my opinion, a negative 75% return since 2021 is just unacceptable because we've seen such great returns in the last couple of years. And for you to underperform that massively is just crazy to me. So I'll rank it as D. In my opinion, stay away unless you know something I don't. But, you know, do not recommend this one. And it's not financial advice. Do your own due diligence. It's just my opinion on this. The QQQ is the benchmark for the NASDAQ 100. So this tracks the biggest tech companies in the world. And it's not equally rated. What I mean by this is that you get more exposure to some of the bigger companies at the top end. So NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, you're getting more exposure to those companies by buying into QQQ and not necessarily equal exposure to all 100 of them. However, I'm still a big fan of the Qs. This has actually outperformed the S&P 500 in the last 10 years, mainly because tech has had a massive bull run. Is it going to do the same thing for the next 20, 30 years? Not sure. However, I do believe tech is one of the best sectors to be in. The Qs is a great way to get exposure for a very, very low fee. QQQM is actually a phenomenal long-term hold. If you want to trade options, QQQ is a little bit better because they have intraday expiries, right? So you can sell options every day on the QQQ if you really wanted to. So I'll rank it as S tier. It's one of the benchmarks, I think, for any portfolio. The QQQ is a great fund. In my opinion, it's one of the best. Let's talk about JEPI. So this is basically a more aggressive SCHD. And they're not necessarily buying companies that pay dividends. They have a team of people trading options, the real strategy, just like I've traded here in the channel if you followed. but they're JP Morgan Chase. They have a lot more information. They're a lot better at doing this than I am. And they actually yield 7 to 8% every year. So a phenomenal fund if you want to grow your dividend investments. I'll rank JEPI as B, mainly because this is very dependent on the portfolio running. You could actually get into a kind of a yield trap. It's not necessarily recommended if you want to put your whole portfolio into JEPI because it's not going to grow. You're just going to be flat or have a little bit of appreciation every year, but I wouldn't count on it. So JEPI is a great hold depending on where you are or how your portfolio is structured. But in my opinion, this is probably one of the best covered call ETFs. So JEPI, in my opinion, will go as B. GLD, this is an interesting one. It tracks the price of gold. And it's, gold's more than an inflation hedge. But the problem here is you get no dividends. You get minimal appreciation. Like if you track gold's performance for the last 30 years, they've basically kept up with inflation. Like last year, we saw a massive run. And sure, that's going to happen here and there. But, if you actually hold this for 20, 30 years, like, dude, you're barely keeping up with inflation. It's not my style of investing. It's very conservative. I think if you're in the 20s and you're investing to gold, it's not the best investment. Like, sure, you want to diversify yourself. Like, sure, I'm all about diversifying my portfolio and this and that. But, dude, I don't think I have 1 or 2% of my portfolio, my net worth into gold. In my opinion, this goes as C. And I think this has a place to people's portfolios whenever there's a lot of uncertainty. However, this is not a long-term play, in my opinion. So I'll rank it as C for now. This is new to me. SMH, they track semiconductor companies. So think NVIDIA, TSMC, ASML, Broadcom, all of those semiconductor companies that have been doing super well these last couple of months, this last year. I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of them that I mentioned. They track all of them. It is pretty volatile. I mean, you've seen ASML move, Broadcom, TSMC, they're phenomenal companies. And semiconductor companies are going to be here forever. I think this is a great ETF, but it is more of a concentrated bet into that industry in itself. So I'll rank it as B, mainly because it is more of a concentrated risk you have there with these companies. I am a fan, and this is one of the better ones that you can buy, in my opinion. This is, of course, not financial advice. It's just what I think. But if you want a little bit more tech exposure, into technology, I think SMH is a great way to do so. Of course, a little bit more volatile than the Qs even. So be a little bit careful with your asset allocation here. And I'll rank it as B mainly because this is a growing industry. SMH, you get a lot of exposure to some of the great companies out there in the semiconductor space. But again, it's a little bit more of a concentrated bet. So you go as B for now. Let's talk about YMAG. This one's interesting. Straight off the bat, I don't even know how these things are legal. They basically pay you like 60, 70% yields on your money, and your NAV just gets eroded over time. So it's basically, you give them money and then they give the same money to you back just in the form of dividends. So you're actually paying taxes on the dividend income that you're getting, and your capital is just eroding over time. I don't even understand how these things are still in the market, but in the last 1 or 2 years, they've been super popular. I'll rank it as D. Honestly, D minus. These things should not be in the market. Stay away from these things as much as you can. Your total return is actually negative if you invest into these. Like, this is worse than investing into ARKK because you literally give them money and then you got to pay taxes on the money that they give you and they disappear with your money. So this is just a mess. In my opinion, stay away from it from all costs. They would have paid so much in dividends because they trade options the money you give them. And it's a great idea on paper, but whenever you actually see it over the last couple of years, it has not worked well. So in my opinion, stay away from YMAG. And if the yield max ETFs, in my opinion, they go as D, and I've never touched them and I never will. Let's talk about VT. This is basically the entire world's stock market. I rank it as B because, it sounds great on paper, but whenever you buy the entire world's stock market, you're just kind of spreading yourself thin. I get the whole idea of getting exposure to European companies, the Asian markets, whatever it is. Like, it's great on paper, but whenever you crunch the numbers, you're actually owning like 7,000 companies, probably even more. It's just not my thing. I rank it as B because, again, depending on your portfolio allocation, it can be a healthy way to diversify your portfolio from the US underperforming in the future. I don't think it's going to happen personally. But, just thought I would share with you guys. It's a great product. It's ran by Vanguard, very trustworthy, low management fees, but it has lower long-term returns than VOO, which tracks the US market. So be very careful with this because you can underperform the market. It's going to hurt you long-term. So I'll rank it as B for now. So talking about SCHG, this is Schwab's version of the Qs. So Invesco runs QQQ, Schwab runs SCHG, and they focus on large cap growth stocks, similar to the Qs. and they actually have a lower expense ratio than QQQ. So very interesting fund. I'll rank it as A, mainly because you're kind of doing the same thing as the Qs. The Qs have been around for multiple decades. You know, it's a tried and true product. So in my opinion, this is more like QQQ's little cousin of sorts. Phenomenal fund, Schwab's phenomenal, but I think it's just like an alternative, and it's kind of adding too much complexity to your portfolio. If you already have the Qs, you know, SCHG might not be the best option because there's a lot of overlap there, but it's just my opinion. It's still a phenomenal fund, and they have lower expense ratios than the Qs. So I'll rank it as A for now. So let's talk about IBIT. This is BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF. So if you want exposure to Bitcoin price appreciation, this is a great way for you to do so. Maybe you don't have a crypto wallet. Maybe you don't want a crypto wallet. This is a good way for you to still have exposure to crypto, specifically Bitcoin. I rank it as B, mainly because you buy Bitcoin, you buy Ethereum so you can use it. You can't really use IBIT to transact. Let's say in 30 years, Bitcoin's widely accepted. You can't just go to Walmart or Target, whatever it is, or transact with someone with IBIT. Like you can't just go like, I'll give you 2 shares of IBIT, give me your iPhone. Like, you know, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't act like a cryptocurrency. So it kind of defeats the purpose of cryptocurrencies in general. But then you also mitigate so much risk. So you don't have to worry about a cold wallet, all of this kind of stuff. So in my opinion, if you want exposure to crypto, IBIT's a great way to do so. But then again, you can't use that crypto. So it's very specific to what you want to do with it. Let's talk about the last one, but not least, VOO. I think you guys already know where I'm going to rank it. It's going to go in S tier. VOO is the benchmark for ETFs. So whenever you think of the stock market, the S&P 500, VOO, Vanguard's fund, and there's of course multiple others, but VOO is one of the main ones that tracks the S&P. This thing has returned more than 10% over the last couple of decades. It has a very, very low management fee as well, 0.03%. So it's basically non-existent. This thing is basically what all the other ETFs get based out of. So if you look at IBIT, if you look at VT, SMH, you're always getting compared to VOO. You're always getting compared to the S&P 500. This thing's a beast. This is one of the main core positions I have for the multiple retirement accounts I have. This, of course, not financial advice, just what I do. Mainly because over 30, 40 years, you can't really beat VOO. And for that reason, it goes in S tier. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what you guys would have ranked different. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. Channel's been getting a ton of views, but you guys are not subscribing. Don't forget to subscribe down here. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you guys soon.